Hello, it's Jonius here. So in this video, I'll be showing you how to fix a lot of issues with the new Steam library client, the layout of it, and how to tweak it to your liking. So mainly, changing the library looking from this to this. So this video will be in two parts. The first part is just to show you how to apply the fixes, tweaking the look of the library. So if you're not a programmer and you don't understand code too much, you just want to apply the changes and be done with it. If that's you, you can just watch the first part. And then the second part is for those who are more comfortable with tweaking and coding. Because the new library is created in CSS and JavaScript, you'll learn how to open up Steam in dev mode and open up the Chrome developer tools for the Steam library to be able to find exactly what it is in the CSS or JavaScript you want to edit and make changes that way. I'll also go through how to bring back the old Steam grid view with landscape game images, something like this if you're interested. Still watch the first part as you'll want to know how to apply the tweaks. How to apply these tweaks. So what you want to do first is to go to Steam Friends Patcher. Go to the main page, Phantom Gamers Steam Friends Patcher. Go to releases here on the right hand side. And get the latest version, the zip here. So once you open it up, the window will look like this. It will automatically patch some Steam CSS files. And then you go to the Steam install directory, which here is the default directory here on screen. And you go to Steam UI folder, and in the Steam UI folder, you'll see libraryroot.custom.css and libraryroot.original.css. So the libraryroot.custom.css, which is currently empty, is where you want all your custom CSS design code to go into. And what you want to do to get my tweaks, go to my repository, which is Steam UI Old Glory, and then download the code here, download zip. Open that up, and then grab the libraryroot.custom.css here, and then drag it over and paste it. But then you'll be able to see my tweaks applied here. So I'll detail which tweaks I applied. You can see you can remove the what's new shelf. I removed some padding in between each shelf, as well as on the collections page. Then on the left hand sidebar, I've condensed the 3 rows of buttons down to 2. As you can see, the home button is much smaller, more practical that way. You can still access all the drop downs and recent activity, ready to play games, the search bar here. And then you've got the list of games, which is much smaller. You can display more games on the screen at the same time. It's comparable to the old UI or the small mode, as you can see. Display lots of games like this. So that's the main thing there. And then on a game page, you can see I have swapped the 2 columns around. So now the friends who play, achievements, and trading cards, screenshots is now the main column. It gets most of the space. And then the activity, you can still see it here. The achievements is 2 to a row, but you can still see all the information in a much more compact manner. So, and if you go to something like City Skylines, you can see lots of space for achievements, for trading cards, for DLC. And you have the community news here you can still look at. Additionally, you can also see that the text, I've increased the opacity of the text so it's more clear and white, easier to see. and the header size here at the top is reduced. So one of the big annoyances is all the missing portrait game images. We want to try and get rid of them. So fortunately, there is a tool. There's a tool called Steam Missing Covers Downloader. I've created an exe for you to run, though I would recommend grabbing the actual source code from the original repository and running it through Python. Otherwise, just grab Missing Cover Downloader, and I'll run it right here. Let it run. Oh, looks like it kind of screwed up. Okay, so I figured out what was going on. If your library is really big and you have a lot of missing images, let's say 300 missing images, the Steam Missing Cover Downloader will have some problems. But if you have, let's say, 200 or so missing images to download, it should run fine. So if you are in that situation where you run the Missing Cover Downloader tool and it won't download the images, just try and get a couple or so manually, put them into this folder. Go to user data, your user ID, config, and then grid. And then you want to put the game images in this folder. Try and grab some of these manually, and then run the tool again, and then it should be able to grab the rest of the images. So as you can see, pretty much nearly every game here is got their portrait image, and that's that for that. So there are a couple of JavaScript tweaks that I would recommend to put in that will clearly improve this. And this is where I have jstweaker.py and jstweaker.exe in. So this is a Python script. If you have Python, which you probably won't have installed if you aren't a programmer, you'll be able to run this file directly. Otherwise, use the jstweaker.exe. And jstweaker.exe takes the code from the fixes text file. There are currently 3 tweaks I've put in that are applied, and that is increase the number of DLC you can see on this on the game page. You can see there's only 6 now, and also increase the number of screenshots, which is 4. So it goes from I go from 6 to 12 and 4 to 8. Additionally, I've also increased the number of DLC in the DLC manager, as you'll see soon. So I'll just grab jstweaker.exe, copy it to the directory, run it. The first time you run it, it will take a little while. Okay, so you can see it ran through the 3 fixes. And we'll go to the City Skylines page, and you'll be able to see it shows 12 DLC, and it shows up to 8 screenshots. And then we go to the DLC manager, and you'll see that the row height has been decreased quite a bit, and instead of just seeing 5 on a screen, you can see 12, and then more easily manage your DLC this way. Okay, so you apply the JavaScript tweaks and the DLC manager. You'll see that it looks like this at first. It still has full-size images, but they're cut off because of the row height. So to fix that, you go to the libraryroot.custom.css, go to the end part here, and you want to uncomment out the DLC manager section. So look at that again. Just comment out this lines, just delete those two lines there. Save it, and then get it to reload. And you can see it's got the small size images there so they can fit with the row. That's there for you to enable. Alrighty, that's the end of part 1. You now have a library tweaked that is much better in my opinion. You can show more games, more details, and then there's a couple things here that you might not be aware of. You can just rearrange the shelves, select, and see the number of hours played, that sort of thing. Metacritic scores if you are interested in that. Additionally, there are actual settings in the client. Like there's low bandwidth mode, which will disable features like the auto loading of community content. Low performance mode if you really need to use that. And then you can choose to not display any icons. If you so choose, that's also within the Steam client. So, this is part 2 of the video. So you've looked at the custom CSS, you want to add in your own tweaks, but you're not sure which CSS, what's the name of the element to change in the CSS. So this is where the Steam dev mode comes in. If you run Steam with the -dev tag, you'll be able to start Steam in dev mode. And how I do that is I create a separate shortcut, and then in the target box, you type space -dev. Click apply. You run that, and then when you open up Steam, you'll see there's a console tab. This is how you know you're in dev mode. Now this is mostly useful for customizing like the outside of the client, which we won't go here. But now that you're on dev mode, you can access the Chrome developer tools. Press Ctrl-Shift-I, and you'll be able to look at the Steam library as if it was a web page, which it is. A web page with CSS and React JavaScript. Now, I won't go into details of or how exactly all the things to do here because there's a lot of features. But for example, now you wanted to remove the trading cards here completely. Just completely remove it. You don't want to see it. So all you do is you highlight over it. You can see that it pops up here. And you've got the class name here. On the right hand side, you can see it says app sections details, that sort of thing. What you want to do, create a new style rule for this specific div, and then type in display none. And there you go. It's gone. And what you want to do to apply this into the custom CSS, copy this section and then put it into the custom CSS, put it in here and save it. Now, another example. Say, for example, you wanted to change the font color of the navigation bar links. So what you would do, select it for using this on the top left, and then you'd be able to select it. Then you want to see which element is controlling the color of the text. So it looks like this, and then you can try and see if that will change anything. It doesn't seem like it. So maybe it's this one here. And then let's say this RGB format. So you can just choose whichever. You can also choose which color you want using this color selector. And as we can see, it's part of this div, app default, detail primary links class, etc. And then you just want to copy that, paste it here, delete the other properties that you aren't changing, and you've got yourself a green navigation bar with links. That's a couple simple CSS tweaks there. Now, as for the JavaScript, the JavaScript is made production ready using a process called minifying, which means it will condense the JavaScript code into 1 or 2 lines. It strips out all the new line spacing. So you can beautify the process or unminify the code clicking this button. And then you can try and figure out how the JavaScript code is working, but because you don't have exact knowledge of what the variables might mean, it can be quite difficult to figure out what it is that you need to tweak within the JavaScript to get exactly what you're looking for. Nevertheless, I was able to find the lines that determined the number of screenshots and DLC shown on the game page. It's determined by a slice function in JavaScript. And so they were here. As well as changing the row height in the DLC manager, which is here. So say you made a change either in using the dev tools or in the actual custom CSS file. To get it to update, you can either just press F5 in the dev tools and just refresh it like a normal page. Or if you're editing in the Steam UI folder, Steam will automatically refresh the page if it detects certain file changes. So to trigger this, what we can do is we can just copy and paste one of those small we can copy and paste one of these small files, and it should just reload the page. And then we can just delete it again if we need to check some changes while we are customizing. So now, bringing back the grid view from the old UI, the one that looks like this. For this, we'll need some extra JavaScript tweaks. So we go to fixes.txt, and you'll see that I've commented out the first 6 lines. These tweaks are needed to grab the landscape game images instead of portrait ones. So we'll just uncomment out these lines. Each of these lines is basically a find and replace in the JavaScript file. It will find every instance of this and replace it with the second string. And each of them is separated by 2 spaces. So that is the extent of the JavaScript tweaks at the moment. Find and replace. Anyway, we'll save that. And what you want to do, you want to run the JS tweaker, which I'll run, so that it will apply those fixes. Just wait until it reloads. Okay, so we got it like this. So you can see that it's loaded the landscape images. So you want to go to the custom libraryroot.custom.css file, and there's a section down here which is horizontal game image tweaks. So uncomment those out, save the file, and get it to refresh. And there you go. You've got your grid view. I've also part of the CSS tweaks is reducing the padding between each of the game images. This also translates to landscape images in the collection like this, and also in the more information panel. Now, it may be possible to have both landscape and portrait images within the same client working together, but that is a bit complicated in the JavaScript. So now this does have a little bit of quirks when scrolling, because it will sometimes reposition the game images in a different position. That is the only thing which is related to this property, where I did try D plus 100 and D plus 2 depending on how big or small the grid images were. As for recreating the old list view in the new client, the one that looks like this, where you have status ready to play, metascore, size on disk, I did go through in my JavaScript tweakings to make something resembling a list view. Because you can view game information in a drop down for all the games with either metascore, size on disk, Steam reviews, last played, hours played, you could theoretically grab that information and have it display it all at once. So this is a proof of concept. It's not an indication of anything robust or actual solution, but it shows that it is possible. So you can see what I did is I grabbed each of the stats and put them together into one text string. So you can see hours played, last played, Metacritic, size on disk. Now the ideal thing would be to put this into a proper table, which you're going to have to find a way to do in React JavaScript, which if you know how React works shouldn't be that hard. It's just I'm not familiar with that sort of thing. But this is how you could bring the list view back, and it wouldn't be exactly the same because it might be a bit complicated to find the cloud save status. Though I'm pretty sure there's a property hidden deep in the JavaScript for that. You just need to find the right one. And maybe we can have a list view. And then the last bit would be a control to easily switch between all three views, like this one at the very top right-hand corner. Coding that in a React JavaScript and putting that into the client would be the last step to bring back the three views functionality that we had in the old client. So I believe this is what I was trying. There was a bunch of switch cases, case 4, case 5, case 9, case 6, depending on the play time, get time, last play, Metacritic score. I would just try and combine those cases together to be able to display this. And then you'd be able to view this in Imgur album using that link. So that's the extent of my JavaScript experiments. Perhaps someone else who is more skilled in React JavaScript can get further. A lot of this was brought about through a Steam discussions thread, and I have to thank these users for helping me with this process. Now, if you have any questions, please leave them in the comments or on the GitHub, and I'll try to get to them. Thank you for watching, and to a better Steam library.